Hello everybody, good morning or good afternoon, good evening, whenever it is you're listening to the podcast. It's me, Paddy Raff, and I'm coming at you today not from the Wonder Year studio. You might have been able to hear that, like if you've got good ears, or what's the equivalent of eagle-eyed for ears? Hawk-eared? Sounds like a crap Avenger. If anybody listening, I'm not in the Wonder Year studio. I'm actually in my shed at home. And if you're watching the video, you'll obviously know that. I've had a lot on this week, and I've been setting up to do a bit of filming in the shed, and I thought, may as well do one from here. But the episode this week is episode 8, and it's with Mike Edgar, who is a really interesting guest, lovely fella. If you know who he is, you know it's going to be a great episode. If you don't know who he is, you're going to enjoy getting to know him over the next hour or so. He's been a legend of the local music scene here for decades. He talks about his time in music. He played in bands. He recorded with a lot of artists, did a lot of TV. PK Tonight, which was a show I loved whenever I was a kid. He was one of the producers on that. He talks about that. Also, Running Up That Hill, Kate Bush song is going absolutely massive at the minute. He was behind the drum sound on it. Well, he bought the drum for Kate Bush, the Lambeg drum, and that's what's on the track. So it's mad to think that song, it'll probably be one of the biggest songs of the year, if not the biggest. And that Mike, we're about to chat to the guy who was behind the drums on it. So yeah, that's amazing. Great episode. He talks about, moving to London with his band Cruella De Ville in 1983, and yeah, it all sort of took off from there. But just a quick shout out as well before we get into the episode. I don't know if I'm speaking fast here, because it's all nice deciding to record this from home, but this is my second attempt at this because my neighbour decided to start power hosing and lawn mowing and strimming. Sounded like all at the same time about 20 minutes ago, and I've had to sit and wait until he stopped. So I'm doing this in the break. I'm going to keep it very quick. Victoria Square also as well. Shout out to them. They are the podcast sponsor. Thanks for sticking with us and sponsoring the podcast. Anybody looking an idea for a present, go for their gift card, because then you can just give it to somebody and say, get your arse down to Victoria Square and have at it. It covers everything in Victoria Square. I'm going to ask them, does it cover the parking? Because I would love that. I would like what a shit gift you would think, but no, I would share it here if somebody handed me and said, look, there's a Victoria Square gift card, by the way, it covers the parking. I'd love that. So check out Victoria Square. The episode is 1983, episode 8 with Mike Edgar. Have we listen, like and share this podcast, send it across to your friends, and thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy.
First time arriving in London, Paddy, it might even been a year earlier when I took a trip over, and we all took the Townsend Torreston bus, which was a bus that went on to a Townsend Torreston ferry, and I think it was like 14 quid return to London or something mental like that, And but I remember coming out at Tottenham Court Road, and it was, there was the tube station that somebody told me I had to come out at. I'd never been on a tube in my life, and that just being on the tube was extraordinary. And coming up out of the ground, but where the tube station comes out at Tottenham Court Road is right in front of this massive theatre. I think it's called the Dominion or something.
Yes, it is. Yeah, because we literally come out of that tube station. It was over a few weeks back.
I came out of that, Paddy, straight into these 2,000 people who I didn't realise were queuing for Adam and the Ants. And everybody I came out of the queue into had like ant-type people. They all had stuff. The makeup. I was freaked out. I go, this must be London, man,
Everyone's like this.
Everyone's like this. This is like crazy, And I was a bit scared, like, But, no, I mean, it was a new beginning, and, it was incredible because it was multicultural, and Belfast definitely wasn't. Sadly, in the 1980s, and it was just, there were lots and lots of interesting people, and lots of interesting culture, and lots of interesting music, and lots of interesting food. I mean, we were pretty kind of, gravy chip and pizza was just arriving, and that type of carry on, whereas London just had a wee bit of everything. So it really truly felt like a new beginning,
Do you think that kind of solidified that your career would always be involved in music then because of that experience? Because obviously everything you've done in broadcasting and music and everything since that, do you think that, was it a decision you made when you went over there as like, this is me set for life, going to be involved in music?
I think so. And I think, if I'm being honest, I kind of always knew that from when I was about 9 or 10. I always wanted to be a jazz drummer, Paddy. Always wanted to be Buddy Rich or Gene Krupa or one of those guys that sat behind Frank Sinatra giving it loads. Or then when you moved into the rock world, I wanted to be, Brian Downey at the back of Thin Lizzy or something like that, or just the guy in Queen. You have your dreams like everybody, and so yeah, it did cement that, and it kind of made me feel I was very, very lucky and very privileged to be hanging out in studios like Abbey Road and Trevor Horn's Sarm West, and DJM, all these incredible studios. Trident, where Tony Visconti had done all the sort of Mark Bolan stuff, all the Bowie stuff. I mean, we were booking these studios because we wanted to go into them because somebody told us like Bowie sang into that microphone.
Brilliant.
And you just wanted to go and sing into the same microphone. It was just boyhood stuff,
That's amazing.
So yeah, it was quite extraordinary. We arrived in London, and really lovely, Paddy. I kind of remember it. They had a signing party at the record company for us, and it was the 17th of March, Paddy's Day, 1983, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the record companies used to do that with new bands at the time. And they'd put a few crisps out and a few beers, and they'd bring all the execs down and all the marketing people and all the whatever, and say, look, this is the next big thing.
Yeah.
Sadly not. But anyway, this is the next big thing, and say hello to the guys and have a beer and mingle. And I looked across the room, and there was this absolutely beautiful woman standing across the room. And at that point, I saw my future wife.
Oh, no way.
Which I, to this day, say is probably the best thing that ever came out of the whole trip to London. And I thought, Paddy, she was looking back at me, but she was looking at our bass player who was beside me, who was a much more handsome guy. And I thought, flip me, that I genuinely thought she was looking at me. And I just fell in love with her straight away. I knew this is the woman I've got to marry. And but I had a moral dilemma that came afterwards. I, back then, may surprise you, Paddy, was quite a shy fellow, and particularly in affairs of the heart. And it took me nearly a year to try and build up the courage to even ask her out or whatever. But I was walking down, she worked in EMI in business affairs, and I was walking down her corridor. I used to always walk past her door as many times as I could to try and get noticed or get a wee look, And I'm walking past her door one day, and there, standing, chatting her up in the corridor, was Phil Lynott, my all-time hero.
You had no chance of filling it was in there.
Paddy, you've
left it too late.
Yeah, Ned. I was like, this was the worst moral dilemma of my life, because it was clear that Phil was trying to ask her out and was flirting, and I'm going, I've always loved that man. I've wanted to be that man.
Now you have to try and
now I've got to try and get him away from the woman who doesn't know it yet, but is going to be my wife. And so it was quite funny. I think they might have had a couple of sherbets together at some stage or whatever. But we eventually did get together.
All right. I thought you were going to say, like, you kind of caught her after and said, listen here, he's already got a girl on the go. Like, I would just
do you know what? I wasn't quick enough to
just totally torpedo him. Yeah.
But you know what? It was kind of a sliding doors thing, because I'd been working in a studio called DJM, London and Holborn, and we were in there making an album, and we were very young. We didn't know what we were doing. I think at that stage we might have been being produced by Roy Wood from Wizard, but it was all mad stuff.
Brilliant.
And
Roy, we loved the ELO in our house. We were big ELO fans.
Mr. Blue Skies and all that stuff.
Yeah, and then Wood kind of left quite early on in the ELO, sort of to go on and do Wizard and all that. But
that's right.
So working with him, did he try and influence anything as we're doing, or was he just there as the sort of producing?
No, hugely. I mean, enormously gifted man, and and multi-instrumentalist, and the guy that had the first record ever on Radio 1, and was it Flowers in the Rain, From the Move, or something like that?
Yeah.
And so no, Roy was just absolutely lovely.
I remember hearing that Roy apparently left ELO because it was taking them about like 2 hours to tune up before their cases did like 20 or 30 piece orchestra. I was like, fuck this,
I know.
just give me 2 guitars and
just get on with
a bassoon maybe at the most of it.
He was an extraordinary character. He took us up to his house in Worcester and stuff like that, which was. We were just a bunch of idiots from Belfast. We couldn't believe we're in Roy Wood's house, But going back to it for a wee second, what was very, very strange about it was this was pre us going to EMI. We were actually signed to Polydor at that stage, and I think, and what I didn't know was that we were down in the studio working away for weeks and weeks and weeks, and that Sam, my future wife, was upstairs, and DJM was owned by a man called Dick James. And it was and Elton John, and Dick James made a fortune, made his name by writing a song called Robin Hood Riding Through the Glen.
Oh, really?
Right? And it was like the old Tin Pan Alley stuff. And he opened this massive studio off the back of the money he made as a publisher. And so my intended, although I didn't know it then, was working in the same building as we were recording then, and she decided to leave Dick and Rocket Records and all that sort of stuff at the same time as we moved from Polydor to EMI. So it was like sliding doors.
And you still kind of
and then we met
parallel.
Again. Parallel. We met then at that time in EMI and then got it together and all that.
Very good.
On. But
meant to be.
It was meant to be. It's meant to be. You know?
Nice way to put it. Well, we'll do the birthday party then. This is our sort of.
I mean, there's so much to unwrap, and I know that there's so much else that we'll get to from 1983. But just as a little bit of a diversion, if we could imagine you at your birthday party in 1983, Mike, first of all, what would you be wearing? How would you rock up to Mike Edgar's
Were you still
birthday
double
party?
denim by that stage? Because this was...
Lads, the double denim had gone at that stage.
All right, it was
it
leather. I'm imagining there might be some form of leather jacket.
Well, we're going to come back to leather later, but there was a bad moment in a bar that rotated around leather. You need to ask. You really do need to ask me.
Definitely.
You really need to ask me.
Need to make sure we get that.
But honest to God, guys, I had no fashion sense whatsoever, and you always thought that when you were in a band that there would be some dressers would turn up, and you know, and you're now, you're signed to a proper record label. You're signed to the label that owned the Beatles, and you're in, you're in Manchester Square where the Red and the Blue album was shot outside, and the Beatles hung over the balcony, and you're in that building. You're going, oh, this is beyond my wildest dreams, but it wasn't.
Nobody
like that.
came near you. You just were left to your own devices.
Left our own devices, and we had no money and no nothing, and you know, like we're living in a house which. You know, there was never any food. There was always a severe lack of toilet roll, but hey, there was plenty of newspaper and all that type of stuff, you know. And it was rare. You know, you were doing other things, trying to earn a few quid, even while you were signed to a band and signed to a label. Paddy, you know all these things. It's just, you know, it always seems glamorous until the reality kicks in. Is that's only the beginning of an awful lot of work that has to happen, and you're always owing people money. You know,
that me? I think I've left
could be one of us. It could be me too.
I'm not that popular. Like I don't. Yeah, it was me.
Goodness sake, nice one, Paddy.
I'm trying to keep it on though because I've got a few questions lined up on my phone from the kids.
Okay,
but
there, I'm on set. But yeah.
So your birthday in 1983, do you remember it? Would it have been a boozy one? Or
I don't actually remember, but I could tell you probably what I was wearing, which was really embarrassing. I took to wearing German one-piece parachute jumpsuits. And we were always looking for something different to wear, you know. And even if you look at the back of some of the singles and stuff like that, here I am, like a right idiot. You're always looking to want to be a wee bit different,
yeah.
You know. And you didn't want to look like somebody out of Duran Duran, and you didn't want to look like somebody out of, you know, I don't know, a Kajagoogoo video or something. It was all that stuff was around in 1983, yeah. You know. And so I went to this Army Surplus store in Belfast, I think it was actually, and bought, which was down in
was it Corn Market.
Corn Market.
Was it Apache? Was that called?
Yeah, that's the place.
Yeah,
that's the place.
I remember that.
And bought this one-piece black parachute German. You know, you jump out of a plane wearing your chute.
Yeah.
And had all these things for putting maps on and everything down the side. And then got to London, and we were shooting a video, and one of the guys said, "It doesn't look special enough, Mike. Doesn't look special enough." And so he says, "What about a few studs?" And so I went out and bought some studs, and I put them in myself along the shoulders. So if you look at any of the old records, hand sewn.
Brilliant.
So I was wearing those, and we used to go to all these cheap shops like Mr. Buy-Right, or you go to Camden Market and you'd buy, you know, I mean, back in the 80s there was this really horrible thing about leg warmers. And it was just guys had trousers that went down. I had these massive socks that came over the end of my shoe, came over the end of my boots, and then over the end of your trousers and the rest of it. And it was kind of what people did back then, but it was a very, very bad fashion time. And you know, when you'd come out of metal and punk, the 80s, you were trying to avoid being someone that dressed in that 80s dress sense, which was very. If you think about some of the bands that were around at the time, you know, it was like, you know, there were some very cool people, like you had your New Orders, and Bowie was still around, and Queen were doing the thing, and you know, Aztec Camera, who I liked, and people like that. And then you had all this other pop culture going on, like Kajagoogoo and the Bell Stars and all that. And there was some very, very awful dress sense.
There was nothing consistent. It always did seem like every single band had a completely different look. Yeah. And as a result, everything just looked like it was an explosion in a thrift shop. You know, everything was just sort of...
Well, let's try and work out what was on the stereo then. Mike, you've already mentioned the classics, and you would have been listening to Thin Lizzy, and you would have been listening to Bowie and Queen. But stuff that was in the charts, so this is May 1983, it's Mike's birthday. What would you have had any of these on your kind of birthday playlist? New Order, so Blue Monday
Absolutely.
would have been
Absolutely.
Tears for Fears.
6 minutes 41 seconds. Blue Monday, New Order.
Yeah.
Tears for Fears. Yeah, I like Tears for Fears.
Yeah. Heaven 17, Temptation was a big hit.
Massive hit, but not really my thing.
Wham and Bad Boys.
Well, no, at the time, definitely not. We'll come back to George in a minute. But actually now, as you get older, you can appreciate a really great pop record.
I think George Michael is one of those people who, because of the whole Wham thing, everybody associated with him, like kind of almost bubblegum pop kind of thing. But the older, sort of he got, and once he died, so many things came out about him that were brilliant, and about his opinions and his charity stuff that I remember just going, like total, like everybody just goes back, like, Wham was a wee gem that we all kind of slept in on.
I think that's absolutely right, because I think when they first came out, everybody was a wee bit sniffy and a bit dismissive. And particularly so of Andrew Ridgeley. They were pretty nasty about Andrew, and I thought, he's a really good guy, and actually he plays well. And but at the time, I was also one of those people going, oh, no, that's young girls like that stuff, and we're rock and rollers. And but actually later in life, you look at Wham and you go, those are great records.
He wrote Careless Whisper when he was 18. Like that's just 18 years old and able to write Careless Whisper.
My wife's favourite artiste of all time, and
George Michael.
And George Michael and Biggie Smalls. Which is
did they ever collaborate?
No, sadly not. Yazoo, Human League, all had top 10 hits in '93 on your birthday.
Not my thing.
New Edition, Candy Girl was number 1.
Definitely not my thing.
Albums in the top 10: Spandau Ballet, Iron Maiden.
Yes, I tragically loved Iron Maiden. Not tragically, I thought they were great. And Spandau Ballet, I actually did get Tony Hadley's royalty checks for several years because I moved into his flat in London after he moved out, and the checks kept coming in the post. Amazing.
Were you able to cash them, or did you just have them?
Did you not live in Sting's house at that time?
Well, no, I was in his house before Tony Hadley.
Do you only exclusively live in pop stars' houses?
That was by accident, but no, we took on. Tony Hadley moved out, and we moved into his flat, me and Sam. And his royalty checks kept arriving every month, and it was like we were broke, and it was really funny. And you'd look at it every month, and it come in, and the moral dilemma, right? The moral dilemma of, do we write "please forward to his new address," or do we just open it neat?
Oh, no way! I'm sure.
Richard?
No, although again, Cliff's one of those people are very sniffy about, and then sometimes, if you're in the house and you get a wee bit of Living Doll comes on the radio, you can't stop your foot tapping. Would you agree?
His Christmas songs, I think, are brilliant. Like even Saviour's Day, like that's the banger for me. I do love an Cliff Richard Christmas song.
He's a friend of ours, Paul McLean. Mike has produced some kind of output, I think it was a broadcast in Belfast, which likely you were involved in, and it always sticks in my head. He said that Cliff Richard was one of the nicest smelling men that he'd ever met.
Oh.
Have you ever had the experience of sniffing Cliff Richard?
No, I have never sniffed the Cliff. No. I have never sniffed the Cliff. That is something possibly for further down the road. Okay. I would imagine he would be a very nice smelling person. He looks after himself. And
I love the story about Cliff Richard, that he cost the BBC millions and millions because do you remember Wimbledon, whenever there was rain, and he got up and he sung with Sue Barker, and he just they just kept him going, and I think he sung a couple of Beatles numbers or lines of the Beatles, and they didn't have clearance for it, so they were apparently in the gallery, they were turning their hairs and going, he's singing another Beatles one, he's doing the whole album, he's doing Sgt. Pepper's.
Stop!
So
Do some of your own.
Millions, because he just did impromptu songs, which makes me think, is that why they did the whole sort of sting operation with the cameras on his house? Years later, they're getting him back.
Number 1 album, you could probably guess, 1983, number 1 album of the year.
Yeah.
And it was also number 1 on your birthday in May.
Which was?
Well, I want you to guess.
Well,
number 1 album of the year. It could only be one.
Oh, I know.
Of 83?
Yeah.
Who was it?
No, I want you to guess.
Well,
American artist.
American artist. I'll give you a massive clue if you don't get it.
Right.
Oh, here comes the xylophone.
Here comes the xylophone.
I'm going to just while you think about it.
Well, I know the album.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, Mike.
I have no idea.
Okay, in December of 1983.
This is torturous.
In December of 1983, this act made probably the most influential, infamous music video of all time. Down the line, he would do some other stuff that people don't talk about so fondly. But in 1983, he had made the biggest records, one of the biggest records of all time.
Go on.
Mike, this is astonishing.
Go on, please.
The Michael Jackson Thriller.
Oh, my God. Beat it. And Billie Jean and all that was out in 83.
Quite big tunes.
Yeah. Quite big tunes.
Would you have had Michael Jackson on at your birthday party in 1983?
Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so, because I'm sorry it took a while to get to that, but I think when you hear the brilliance of Quincy Jones meets Michael Jackson, and you hear those beats of and it, it's just the production is unbelievable. And I remember I was actually in the bath the first time I heard Billie Jean. I was just lying in the bath and I just sat bolt upright. I just thought I'd never heard anything just so tight. And the drum sound on it was just enormous. It was probably a sample. But
the vocals were done in one take, apparently, as well. That whole song is one take.
Oh, man.
I was watching a bit about it, by Quincy Jones talking about it. They didn't get on that well, so it was like a bit of fire and ice kind of thing. But
which is often in the way with many as a producer.
Yeah,
that type of thing. I mean, Jackson was huge. He would have been. I would have put him on, but at the same time, if you remember in '83. Like Queen were doing Radio Gaga and all that. There was loads of stuff that was coming out at that time that was that was more probably my thing. Type of.
Should we give Mike his gift?
Yes,
a gift?
Virtually, or we'll have to suspend our disbelief.
Well, suppose if people aren't watching the video, we can pretend. Mike wouldn't buy that because why would he try and make us out to be worse. So, Mike, I'm going to give you an option of two presents that were massive in 1983, and I want you to tell me. This is before Paddy will sadly lower the tone of your party in a little moment, but for now, either the Sony Walkman.
Yep.
Or a boombox.
Okay.
And this is interesting. Your choice is going to tell us a lot about you. Are you the type of guy who would listen to music on your headphones? Or are you the type of guy who would have had a boombox and everyone else has to listen to it? What do you want?
Sony Walkman, without a shadow of a doubt.
Okay.
Because my mate Colin had, who's in the band, had the first Sony Walkman I think I'd ever seen. As in, really, it was a more upmarket one because it had buttons that were touch sensitive, as opposed to mechanical. Exactly,
push and click.
Exactly, push and click. And I later got I couldn't afford the Sony one, so I got the Iowa Walkman. And it was, you just thought you were the guy and you were walking around listening to music. But it was also fantastic if you were in a band because you put your own tapes onto the Walkman and then you drummed along or you played along, and it was a great way of rehearsing. It was a cheap man's way of rehearsing in a rehearsal room and all that sort of carry on. So definitely a Sony Walkman. It was the best thing ever.
You ever had a boombox on your shoulder?
No, but there's still time. There's still time. It could be done.
We should have bought one. This would have been a perfect
in fairness, we could have got a Walkman.
I had a Walkman. I went back to a Walkman then. So in my GCSE years, so probably 98, 99, I remember going to school and I'd been bought, one of the portable CD ones.
Yeah.
But it was an Alba from
I still have one.
Argus, and it said shockproof, right?
They're not.
But this thing had to be. You basically had to have a spirit level on top. And I used to walk to school with mine, and at the start it used to fit in my blazer pocket and it was fine, and then it just wouldn't play. So I used to walk to school, and I remember wee fellas laughing at me on the bus. you look like a butler, because I was walking with it like this, like trying not. And then I went back to the Walkman then, because it was, you could knock that about and whatever. So I just recorded all my CDs on the tapes and went backwards.
They were absolutely brilliant, but that was still the era where if you were making up a mixtape or something of that nature, you were still going back from one cassette player to another cassette player, clunk, 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 back and forward,
taping off the radio and
all that sort of stuff, But
with presenters who just won't shut the. It's very much come from me and Mike.
Two of them in this room.
The irony.
Oh, I used to hate that though. Whenever it was used, obviously would know way more about it, but whenever they would say, coming up on the hour, we've got blah blah, and then they would say, and say I was into the Manic Street Preachers or something, and you had a good tape and you were leaving a space because you'd only a couple of minutes. You're like, that'll do, the latest Manic song, or whoever, Stereophonics, whatever, and then they go, coming up on the hour, we've got Stereophonics, and they tell you the name of the song, right? Happy Days. And then you listen to the whole hour and they don't get to it because they're talking so long. And they're like, oh, there's those over there. Maybe we'll get to it. We're like, no. I used to fucking kill me.
I'm saying nothing.
Well, that kind of inspired my DJ character who will not shut up, because it was like, just get to the music.
Do you know what? I remember one night, many years ago, must be about 20, 30 years ago, I was doing the show Across the Line that we all know and love. And there was a guy in London got the first play of the new U2 album. And I, used to like some of the really do like some of the U2 stuff, and I wanted to be the guy that played the first U2 album, and so I'd said on Across the Line the night before, and I'll be playing exclusively the new U2 album, a couple of tracks from that tomorrow night, so tune in. And but what I had actually done was I'd set a lineup to London, and I was I think it was a Mark Goodyear show, and he was playing it, and I quarter-inched it, and I just taped him playing it on, and then. He then talked, just as you said, Paddy, he talked over about the first 10 seconds of whatever the track was from Bono and the Boys. So then I had to like fade it up so that you couldn't hear him. And so I opened the show at da-da-da-da, and so I told you I have the exclusive play tonight, and here's U2, and you can quietly hear Mark Goodyear in the background as I'm tipping up this quarter-inch tape, The things you did for fame and fortune.
And now you can't avoid the U2 albums. They put them on your phone without you asking.
I know, you don't ask, you buy Apple, you get it.
So that's Mike's having a good time at his party.
It's all going well, but then this is a segment in the It's My Party that we like to call Guess Who Is Dead. Guess Who's Dead.
Right.
Because what would happen is, inevitably at a party, there'll always be somebody, usually like one of the older ones, maybe your granny or whatever, will come in and say, did you hear who's dead? Yeah. So we found out the celebrity who died closest to your birthday, who everybody would be talking about, going, guess who's dead.
It's slightly upsetting, because this is a young death, and it's a very traumatic, especially if you are a drummer. It's very apt.
So we're going to try and guess this one.
It's I thought it'd be a fun way.
Do you know who it is then? We'll see if you remember.
A drummer, an incredible, remarkable drummer who died a mere weeks before your birthday in 1983. And it's a drummer, Mike. So it
wasn't John Bonham, was it?
No.
In 83?
See, I don't think he would get it, because he just wouldn't necessarily be thinking along these lines. But it's an absolute legend of music.
Okay.
Who wouldn't necessarily, you would forget is a drummer.
Okay.
It's not Phil Collins, obviously, because he's alive.
Yeah.
So neither of you is going to be able to guess.
Oh
this,
no, I can't think.
Do I need to get the xylophone out again?
How are you going to drum on a xylophone?
Let's go for it.
Play a melody.
Okay.
I don't know. So no.
Riggs, you're going to have to rehearse these. This is
okay. No, that's good actually. There's a kind of hush all over the world tonight.
Drummed on that.
Hold on a second. Karen Carpenter.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Karen Carpenter.
So you don't think it's Karen Carpenter as a drummer?
I do always think of him as a drummer. Yeah, I do.
Well, you might, because you are a drummer.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
Well, first of all, I loved Karen Carpenter, and some might say it's very uncool to say. I don't care.
No,
I don't think it is, though. I think that they have that weird...
I'm amongst musical friends.
That snobbery in the back of the day,
but it used to be really naff to say you like Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
And it probably, at some point, it was probably really naff to say you like Queen. But now I think it's very cool to say you like the Carpenters. Well, not that it matters, you just like them.
Now that you bring it up, I do remember she passed away around that time. I just always thought, again, right, two things. I always thought Karen Carpenter's voice was pure honey. It was just gorgeous, and the sort of combination of her and Richard was incredible, and all his production and the rest of it. But she just brought so much, and yet was extinguished so young. And I can't imagine. I'm trying to remember what age Karen was when she wouldn't have been probably early 30s or something of that nature.
32, 33.
Yeah, and total tragic. And again, it was one of those albums that your parents always had. It was kind of Hush and Colleague Occupants and all that stuff.
Was Close to You on that?
Close to You was on that. Yeah.
See that I never knew as a kid. I never knew that Karen Carpenter was drumming and singing at the same time, and I'm always impressed by that, like Don Henley and stuff. Anytime you see a drummer singing really well,
it's really hard to do.
But then have you seen any of the videos of Karen Carpenter like just letting rip doing solos?
Wow. Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely. And she never wanted to come out from behind the drums. She never wanted to front the Carpenters. She hated being out front. And she also said, any drummer will tell you this, the drum is sort of a little bit of a barrier between you and the audience.
Of course,
and if you're a shy kind of person, you will do all your stuff, but you've got the drums between you. It's like having a desk between you and the guest, you know. And she never wanted to be out front, but Richard kept saying, "No, you got to do it." And then he hired a drummer and pushed her out front. But I loved the Carpenters. They were great. They were really good. Yeah.
So that was a good party until...
Brilliant.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that down.
Brought the tone down.
Have you got any other deaths in the year that you want to bring up or anything of that nature?
Do you, Riggsy? I don't know. Was it a bad year for...
Muddy Waters died just a couple of days before Mike's birthday in 1983, but I just thought it'd be nicer to have a drummer. Nicer being the...
Nicer
One other thing before I let you get back to talking about the year in general, one thing that did happen in 1983 that rang a bell, knowing Mike as has done, the very first episode of Blackadder was broadcast in 1983.
Yes.
And you have had encounters with Ron Atkinson?
Yeah, I remember. You know, it's. Thanks.
No, but I'm not being smart because I genuinely I know that it was just quite a difficult interview. Would that be fair?
It was a difficult interview. I'm sure he's a perfectly lovely man, of
course,
and all that.
Having
type
a
of
bad day.
We was maybe just having a bad day. It was, you know, when you have one of those, you spend your life doing interviews, and there are various people that always leap out as, wow, that was life-changing and very giving and very nice, because you've got a job to do as well, and you've got to go along and hopefully help them promote whatever they're wanting to promote, be it Blackadder or be it a new film or be it a book or be it a tour. And I'd been asked to go and interview Rowan, and I didn't bid for it. I was asked by whoever was promoting, and he was doing a tour, and I went along, but I just don't think he was in good form.
The stand-up tour he was doing?
It was in Belfast, and I just don't think he was in good form. And so it was one of those ones that kind of sits at the back of your mind that, you know, I've had better days at the office, so to speak. You know?
I think that's what you call a diplomatic.
Yeah, that's a very diplomatic.
I don't want my my memories of Zazu from The Lion King to be eroded, because that was the peak for me for Rowan Atkinson.
But even Mr. Bean, you know, all that stuff was great crack.
My sister met him in London. She used to go to Lambda, and he did it like a workshop thing, and she remember the thing she told me, she said, he's actually really good looking in real life. I was like, what? You can't. Is this a different Rowan Atkinson? Like Mr. Bean? Like, no, there's something, like he was actually
I can see that.
Good looking guy. But Blackadder was one of those things, we didn't really watch it in the house, but I remember in school when we were studying the First World War, they brought in on like one of the days where, you know, the teacher when the teacher was having a bad day, aka hungover, they wheeled in the TV on the stilts, and they stuck on that last episode, and that was the first time I'd watched the full episode.
They all go over the top?
They go over the top, and it was so good, really poignant. And then we went to the Psalm Centre and did all, so it was like very morbid, obviously, but that was such a brave thing to do, to end a series, you know, that was like jokes, and then for Baldrick to have that, after he's got a cunning plan, then
there is, listen, no doubt that Rowan Atkinson is actually a genius, and the combination of him and Richard Curtis and all that kind of stuff, the writing is astounding. But that, you're quite right. I remember that ending of that particular episode, and it was just a bit jaw-dropping and a wee bit tearful.
Yeah,
actually. You know,
and the first series in 1983 was kind of rubbish, because it was 2, 3, and 4 are incredible, but the first one, Blackadder, was daft and Baldrick was clever, and then they flipped it in the second series, and that completely worked.
Yeah.
So the first season is a complete write-off, because it doesn't really, it's not what you know, what they sort of became.
I used to love Tony Robinson. I used to love him as Baldrick, and I loved him in that programme, Time Team. We got my mate produced that programme, and they went all over the place. He said they got away with murder. You know, they were just, can we come to Windsor Castle and dig up your lawn? Can we come to whatever? We're sure we'll find something. I always had this theory that they always made sure they found something, if you know what I mean.
Planted.
Oh, look at that.
I'm going to play actually this. So I always get my kids to ask a wee question, because they're always interested in who I'm interviewing and who's going to be here. And so I was telling Ronan, giving him a bit of rundown of who you were, and he was taken aback by a certain fact that I gave him. So he's going to ask you a question about it, I think.
Hi, Mike. My dad told me that you met Freddie Mercury. What was he like? Was he the greatest?
So Ronan's quite obsessed.
No, you met Freddie Mercury.
Ronan. Yeah.
I read. Great question. I hope he did, otherwise I've got this.
Nice one, Ronan. Nice one, Ronan. Well, Ronan, there's a funny story to this, but I'll have to mind my P's and Q's. But we had a wee band house.
Quite often when Ronan asks a question, the answer that is given isn't necessarily for his ear, so don't worry.
Are we okay then?
You could say what you want, because I'll just say, Ronan, he said he was lovely. And that was Freddie Mercury was lovely.
He's a good singer.
So, you're signed to EMI, which was, they were the biggest band on EMI at the time. And the guy that signed us was a lovely, lovely man called John Bagnall. And I think John had signed around 3 acts at that time, around that period. 2 well before us, and the 2 before us were Kate Bush and Queen. Mm-hmm. And I did get to talk to him one time years later and said, well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, And
you gave Kate Bush the lambeg drum, did you?
I sold her a lambeg drum.
That's
made a few quid in that. It was great.
And running up that hill is what it was.
Anyway,
brilliant.
We'll come back to that.
Is the hill drum Cree Hill? That's what I was.
Well, of course.
That was my. It inspired it.
Probably. Yeah, who knows? It was quite a funny thing to get drawn into. But yeah, sold her a lambeg drum and we got fluffy clouds painted on it and everything. But the Queen thing was quite funny because I was in our band house and the phone rang one night and I picked up the phone, and I said hello, and this voice thing was, oh hello, this is Brian May here, and I went, yeah right, in that kind of Belfast way, and I said yeah okay, and no it's Brian here from Queen, and I said look, I don't know who this is, but this isn't very funny, and we're just over from Belfast, just arrived, very very funny, haha, put the phone down. Mistake. And phone rings back again, and I pick up the phone again. I back down, and our band house was like something out of the young ones, and I pick up the phone again, and hello. I said, Brian here. I just wondered. I was just ringing, and look, whoever this is, not very funny. Okay, yep. Hung up again. Phone rings for the 3rd time, and it's John Bagnall, the guy that had signed us. And John said, Mike, Brian May keeps ringing up because he's not a lovely man, and of course he is a lovely man, and he had heard one of the tapes and wanted to speak to the band, or probably to Colm or Mina, who were actually phenomenally gifted people and wonderful musicians, and I went, you're kidding me. I've been hanging up on the Brian May, and anyway, rang back and I picked it up, and it was it was so sad. I go, Mr. May. Brian.
Did you apologise? Were you like,
of course you apologise.
Oh,
you can imagine it,
Yeah.
And so I ended up. They very kindly. They were doing some demos in the record company. Manchester Square had its own little very famous demo studio, which we had worked in, and lots of other, when we were there, we were so privileged to work in it, but they were doing some, I don't know whether rehearsing or doing some demos, whatever, so we got to go down and spend the afternoon with Steady Freddie and the boys, and it was, we just sat at the back, I certainly can only speak for myself, but we sat at the back, I remember sitting in the back like a startled schoolchild, going, supergroup, but all just lovely guys, just going, fellow musicians kind of stuff, But there are a few brushes with those kind of weird moments where you get it right and you get it wrong. One moment, Paddy, when I got it very, very badly wrong, we were working in Trevor Horn's studio, it was called Sarm West, I think, and he had Zang Tum Tum as the label or whatever at the time, and Trevor had made all his money out of Buggles, and they had Video Killed the Radio Stars.
First video on MTV, was it?
First video on MTV. And so we were working, and one of the joys of working in studios that maybe had 2 or 3 studios in the same place, where there were always other bands in the other rooms. And anyway, I'm sitting at lunchtime outside having a sandwich in the reception area and a wee cup of tea. And this guy came up to me and he says, "Oh, how you doing?" And I said, "Oh, doing great, thanks very much." He says, "Where are you from?" "Ah, Belfast." "Where are you from?" He says, "Oh, Liverpool." I went, "Liverpool? Oh, great, yeah." Like I say, we're chatting away and da-da-da-da. Nothing dropped. I mean, you know what I'm like. Sometimes it takes a week later I get the point, And I'm very bad. And I says, "What are you doing?" He says, "We're trying to make a record, but who knows, blah, blah, blah." I said, "What are you doing?" Same. And I said, "Oh, great." and he says, "Do you want to hear it? Do you want to hear our tape?" I said, "Yeah, dead on, whack it on there, And we're getting on famously. He was a real nice fella. And he puts the tape on, and I'm sort of listening, try to be polite and everything, and listen to production, and like I say, and he goes, it gets to the end, and I always think it's very important to be polite, but to be honest. And there's no point in telling somebody you like something if you don't, And he says, what do you think? Biggest mistake of my life, I said, yeah, have you got anything else? And he goes, no, this is it. I said, oh, right. Is there still a bit of work to be done? And he goes, no, it's pretty much finished. I guess, yeah. And I go, yeah. I said, why, you don't really like it? I said, well, to be truthful, I said, not naturally my kind of thing, but maybe a few more listens, I'll get into the groove and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, he was Holly Johnson and the record was Relax. And he was the loveliest.
How many records did Frankie?
2 million.
Jesus
2 million of that record. Biggest selling single, I think, of all time in the UK at that point. And it sold something like 2 million copies.
But you're bound to have got it wrong on an awful lot of occasions. And I don't mean that as in because you're Mike.
The guy that would turn down the Beatles.
Because as a broadcaster for a couple of decades, surely you've listened to stuff and not clocked on, and maybe clocked on eventually and helped the band become the band that they went on to be, and being a massive step up.
I'm sure you're the same all the time.
Of course, of course.
People come in and they sit down and you just don't get it for a while. And then after a fashion you go, whoa, this is, And I always felt, that there were several bands that I picked up on just a wee bit too late, and I felt, I've been a bit of a Johnny come lately. I should have copped this 6 months ago. But sure, that's life.
Of course.
There's lots of tunes I got, but it was just so awful. Paddy just turned around and going, have you got anything else? Like I say, certainly, I mean, he went on to sell 2 million of that record, and I was back in Belfast looking for a job not long after.
You'd been asking him if he'd done anything else. Yeah. You did a lot of TV and stuff as well. We were just saying earlier about PK Tonight.
Yeah.
So the guy, Chris Jones, who produced our TV show, The Paddy Raff Show, was also working on that as well. Yeah. And I remember as a kid watching that and thinking that was the first time I felt like something that we were doing here was punching at the same weight as, like, don't forget your toothbrush and all that stuff was out around then. Yeah. And I always remember. So it was class to learn that you were exec producing on that, or producing.
Yeah, it ran for a long time. And Paddy and I had been friends since he would have been about, I don't know, very young, I think he maybe just started Queens or whatever, and I just started the radio programme, and it used to be called The Bottom Line, and then I changed it to Across the Line in the late 80s, and Paddy was trying to start he was just thinking about doing a bit of comedy, Paddy, he was just thinking about doing a bit of stand-up. And he was doing lots of Billy Connolly impersonations. He was doing the big yin, and he was really good at it. And I just used to invite him on the show all the time just to be the big yin. And I would just go, like, just pretend you're Billy Connolly, come on the show, and everybody will think you're Billy Connolly. And Paddy would come on the show, and he would do impersonations and all that kind of stuff. And he was probably late teens, I would think, at the time, maybe, and maybe at Queen's, I think, even at the time. And we were very friendly, and we'd been friends all through our careers, and then very weirdly, PK was on the telly before I got involved. Green Ink were doing it with Stephen Stewart, Paul Evans, and all those guys, Jackie, a whole load of people. And then very strangely, I glided into BBC Entertainment, and had a dodgy period of several years of being head of entertainment at the BBC, and along with that was you had to exec produce anything that was coming out of BBC at that time. So we went through several versions of PK. It was like Patrick Kielty Almost Live, PK Tonight, all that kind of stuff, and it was brilliant fun. And I think I got to work on or exec produce maybe about, I don't know, 30, 35 shows, of maybe more. So it was a long association where we got away with murder. And we got into some trouble as well. I mean, it was just like we were doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Like just for a bit of crack, we would what we did, the show would be live. And when Jonathan Ross was off, we would be on. And we'd have production meetings, like 2 or 3 days before the show. And Stephen and Paddy, myself, and the guys would all sit around, and I'd say, well, chaps, are we doing anything this week that I should know about? Like this here? And they go, yeah, I've got this great idea, Mike. So what we're going to do is we're going to put, I'll give you a couple of examples. We're going to live on network television where, people always say that, BT9 and the Malone Road and the rest of it. Very good class of people all around BT9. Very trustworthy, moneyed folk, all that type of stuff. And the rest of Belfast, well, count the fingers in your hand, and they sort of carry on. So we thought, right, okay, what are we going to do here? And I said, well, we had this really good idea. We're going to put a brand new television, colour TV that dates us, colour TV in a box, and we're just going to leave it sitting on the side of the Malone Road.
And see how long.
And we're going to put another one on the Falls, right? And we're going to put a hidden camera on both, and see which one gets nicked first.
And did you actually do it?
We did it, aye.
And who went first?
Malone Road, what are you?
Sure.
This is an interesting one for Paddy, because this is you. Yeah, this is Paddy Raff versus Nigel.
I would have said that. I would have said Malone Road.
Oh, definitely.
First, yeah.
Definitely. I think it was a Mercedes pulled up and somebody looked around. We're all watching it. And of course, I can't even remember. We got into huge trouble. And I ended up several times on Points of View with Terry Wogan because people were complaining.
That's an accolade, though.
It was an accolade.
On Points of View, people moaning about you.
I think I was on Points of View because we weren't politically correct enough in the programme back at the time. But I read something Paddy wrote over the weekend, which he was quite right. The kind of comedy that we were doing back then, you would find it very hard to do it now. Mm-hmm. In what is described as the woke generation and the rest of it, it's things for some of the right reasons and sometimes some of the wrong reasons have changed.
It's funny because that Points of View was like one of the only times people got to do that complaining, whereas now it's 24/7 on multiple platforms and people can do it. Whereas back then you had to wait and hope that it got read out. But Points of View, I loved watching Points of View just to go, there's these people in the world that are really getting their high horse about certain things.
I know. Claire from Clitheroe was devastated to hear that.
And then the ones were the absolute arse kissers who would write in and be like, I must say that Songs of Praise was really well presented from blah blah blah.
More, I thought Catherine Jenkins was marvellous.
More please, BBC.
Well done,
folks. They're the ones that have top fan badges on Belfast Live,
I remember a couple of other ones. We had one, I can't even remember whether we abandoned it or whether we did it and then got into trouble. But there was one where we were going to do, a guy was getting released from prison and we were going to go live to him outside and we had actually talked him into doing it. And it's so long ago, I genuinely can't remember whether we did it or not. You know the way sometimes you think, did we ever do that?
Yeah, you're working it through in your head so much that you can't remember whether you actually went and filmed it or not. So a genuine, actual fella getting out of prison.
Real true Bill, right? He was getting out of jail, and it wasn't for something horrible. You had to be careful with that, But anyway, you probably hadn't paid 500 parking tickets or whatever. But anyway, he was doing a few weeks in Chokey, and he was getting out. And we were outside with the cameras. This was the whole idea, and we would do a quiz with him. And he hadn't seen his wife for weeks, obviously. And if he won the quiz, he got a night in a 5-star hotel with a jacuzzi and dinner, bed, and breakfast. And if he didn't, we would put him back in jail for another week.
Oh my God.
So those are the kind of things that got me into trouble. Yeah,
I don't think you could do that today.
No. There'd definitely be something. Someone will complain.
There were some very funny ideas. Some of which we did, some of which we didn't get. We got into trouble once for doing boys standing at the side of the M1 in balaclavas with their fingers out with a Garvaghey Road, like Drumcree,
Yeah. But see, I remember then. I don't know if you worked on the show the night after or the night of the bomb in
London
Canary
bomb.
Wharf.
Yeah, Canary Wharf.
And I remember as a
Paddy
kid
tore the
going,
script up.
I was like to me, I was like, and I remember I clocked it. It was on the news that afternoon. I went, PK tonight's to go out live tonight. And then I was like, surely that's cancelled to my man. So I was like, I don't know. I think they're going to have to do it. And so it started. And I remember going, how are they going to? Because it was always very topical.
Yeah.
You would have done an opening monologue, wouldn't you, about the satirical stuff?
Yeah.
And I was like, what's he going to say? And he just came out and was like, well, we had a script, set ready to go, and he just lifted it and tore it and went. And I remember going, that's the way to do it. Just kind of like we're
what was on the show then? What did you?
Well, I remember very vividly that the Lighthouse Family had a song in the charts at the time, and they were the live act. And Paddy Kielty turned around and says, well, he says, let's go for our live act tonight. It's the Lighthouse Family with a song that describes what a lot of fellas in West Belfast will be tonight. It's Lifted. This is like hours after the Canary Wharf form. It's like, that's brilliant.
No,
I always remember that.
Well, he was, Paddy was absolutely brilliant. I wasn't part of that show at that time. The guys were up and running the show long before I ever got involved as a dodgy exec. And so they put the show on the map. But that show was a defining show, Paddy. It was a really good one for you to pick out. But I mean, in all seriousness, Paddy had gone through so much with his own very sad things that happened to him with the loss of his father and the rest of it. And in a way, he's written quite openly about that recently. About
it's been very powerful.
How that has given him, he felt he was, pardon the use of the phrase, but he felt he was almost bulletproof to get up and actually give both sides of our community as much stick. Back in those early days, if you were slating, the paramilitaries or political organisations or Green and Orange or whatever, if it wasn't him, it would have been very hard to do.
Yeah.
But he was rightfully saying at that time, well, who's going to say to me I haven't suffered from the Troubles? And rightly so, because most families were touched. But he did some very powerful writing recently, and I really, really got it, where he was saying that the comedy was almost therapeutic for him to get up and exercise those, this is what I'm thinking, and you know what, I bet you everybody in the room's thinking the same.
Yeah.
And so
he's kind of got like that sort of elder statesman feel to him now. And he's not that old, but it feels like he's very much a product of that time. And then to be somebody at the forefront of comedy and entertainment coming out of the Troubles, he was the right person at the right time to be doing that kind of stuff.
Of all the guys that were floating around at that time, I really think he helped elevate us out of ourselves, and he also helped sell Northern Ireland in a different way to the rest of the world and to the rest of the UK and Ireland. So I think he did us all a service, and I think he maybe was saying all the stuff that we were all too scared to say.
Yeah.
And so big up Paddy Kielty for that time, I guess.
Big time, yeah.
Huge.
What about Clara's question? We never got Ronan's.
Okay. Let's see.
These questions are always really good because they just take us completely off piste.
Well, this might be
as if the podcast isn't off piste.
This may not be as Paxman-esque as the other ones have been, but let's see.
So Clara.
It's Clara's 4.
What was your favourite sweets back then?
She's obsessed with sweets.
So 1983.
Oh man.
Going to London. The sweets in London.
Listen, well, no. Actually, lads,
It's code for class A drugs, by the way.
I was hoping you'd pick up on it.
Of which nobody ever partook, of course.
What kind of sweets did
Just
Freddie
say no,
Mercury
kids.
have
That was the
Yeah.
that was the word from Washington. Just say no. The sweet of choice, Clara, was definitely a quarter of lemon bonbons. Which, by the way, you're very lucky, fellas, that I'm actually sitting here tonight, because I have just gone through the most horrendous thing. I used to find that lemon bonbons pulled out all my fillings.
Well, it's just lemon bonbons. I mean, you could get a lemon bonbon that was soft, and sparkly, and and flaky, and then you got the ones that were just rock hard, and they're just night and day.
Yeah.
Night and day.
So which are you talking? Do you like them soft?
Well, there's the one, you see, the ones that had the powdery yellow stuff on the outside and were really chewy.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
That's what I
want.
want.
Fillings out, right? They're the class ones,
Yeah.
right? But they used to take out all my fillings. But the reason I'm actually, I wanted, if you've ever heard of this, I'm actually here in severe pain today. I know it doesn't look like it.
You're soldiering.
I am soldiering on for you guys, right? But the bottom line of it is, I went through something 2 days ago I'd never known anybody could go through. I had a tooth taken out, a massive tooth here taken out, cleaned, and put back in again.
What?
Tooth implantation, it's called. Right? I kid you not. And my friend, the dentist, who's a great guy, he said, no, kidding, it can be done. And I said, well, what would normally happen? I said, well, normally you've got a bad tooth, we'll take it out and buck it out, and then you're a bit gummy, or you can get a bridge, or you can get an implant. I can't afford an implant. How much your implant? No, I can't afford an implant. And he said, we can take your tooth out and we can do a bit of work on it, and as long as it's back in your mouth inside 15 minutes, it should grow back again.
I've never heard that.
I have just had this massive tooth taken out 2 days ago. I'm swollen up like crazy and put back in again. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
There you go. So listen, give me a
too
shout.
Too many lemon sherbets.
Too many lemon bonbons. If you're ever getting a bit of a tooth problem, give me a shout and get you a cheap deal.
Yeah.
And, cash.
Give me one of yours. Does it work like that?
Well, apparently it used to in the old days. People used to swap teeth. That is absolutely true. Back in the day, before they had proper dentures and things like that, people would sell their teeth and donate teeth, and you could get one taken out and somebody over there would go clunk, and then they'd try and put yours back in.
I can imagine that. My granddad was mustard for that kind of thing. He would have been, if you'd have said you got like a boil under your tooth, he would have just says, come here, and he would have lit a match and put a Stanley blade over and then sliced it.
No.
He was into all.
No.
He had all sorts of circulation problems and all that because he used to just take Stanley blades to things and cut them and I'll be dead on. Yeah.
Did you ever hear or see the late great episode of Jerry Anderson about the woman who lost her teeth at the airport?
Yeah.
It was absolutely brilliant. There's a woman came on the radio one day and she said, Jerry, and Jerry's going on whatever. He says, Jerry, I've lost my teeth. I need your help. I need your help. And Jerry, and he was my hero as a broadcaster. And Jerry goes, what did you leave? And he says, I think I left them on top of the toilet, ladies' toilets in Aldergrove Airport. Like this here was coming off. And he said, all right. He says, and they're chatting away. He says, whatever her name is, Marjorie, were these your talking teeth, your eating teeth? And I didn't know there were two things. She said, oh no, Jerry, they were definitely my eating teeth. That's the problem. That's the problem. I didn't know there was such a thing. Apparently, there's two sets of teeth. Yeah. There's one that your proper teeth were talking.
It's like formal and
your formal teeth,
casual, smart casual,
smart casual. And then your teeth for you're getting stuck into a decent burger or steak. Those ones that can really deal.
Didn't know
with
that either. You're learning so much about teeth.
There you go. I know. Where are we going?
It's a dental podcast. Right, Stevie, any other tidbits you want to throw in?
I'm very, very interested, just to kind of wrap, and this is such a sort of predictable question, but Mike, living the kind of life that you have to date and your career to date, and that kind of guy in the weird German onesie arriving in London in 1983, know what you know now, what might you have warned 1983 Mike about? What might you have taken him aside and asked him?
Yes, I would definitely have told him not to wear the one-piece German jumpsuit. I would definitely have told him not to blow dry his hair. Okay. That was because every picture I've seen of myself, there's a big hole at the front of my head, and then hair going in every direction. Because I used to just blow it just there, And it also brings back nightmares. Because we once went on tour, this club tour with Modern Romance, Junior, and a few other bands, and nearly choked to death on hair products from them because they were really into that sort of hair thing. I would probably have told myself not to take it just as seriously as I took it, and I would probably have told myself to remember every penny you borrow from a record company or a bank, you got to pay it back. And but it was all quite a rock and roll ride at the time. So yeah, quite a lot of lessons to be learned. To be honest to God, truthful with you, Rachel.
I think with Mike, it's the butterfly effect thing. I don't think that you really want to change too much.
That anytime anybody asks that question about going back and telling you, I always feel like I'm happy enough with how things.
And I think,
or would you not say that you would be happy enough with how things panned out, or would you?
It's funny, it's when people say to you, are you going to retire? Are you ever going to retire? And the reality of it is, in your heart, you never really will. And people say to you, would you change anything about where you came from and what you did? And I think it's probably more honest to say probably not much, because actually you wouldn't have done what you did, and you wouldn't be sitting here, the three of us talking nonsense together, if you hadn't been through that journey. And I wouldn't have met my wife if I hadn't gone on that journey, and I wouldn't have. Who was the best thing that came out of the whole trip? So yeah, probably not much.
It's a less entertaining answer, but more truthful. So I appreciate that you went for the other one, and I'll take you up on the. I think the blow drying thing is what did me as well.
I was worried about you.
We did Dyson, you see, so it was wrong way. But that's what
I was reading about a fellow who's had a bit of hair loss there recently, Paddy, who said the answer is never wash your hair. And then it grows back.
That, yeah.
Yeah, did you see that?
He's
got a really head of hair, that guy too.
He is, absolutely.
There's a school of thought that I have that any fella in our year in school who had curtains are bald now, and we're the only ones in our year that are bald, and we all had curtains. So that's gonna be my 50p's worth of that debate. It's not based in anything like. Well, Mike, it's been really enjoyable chatting to you. Thanks very much for coming in.
Paddy, thank you very much. It's been an honour.
The Wonder Year with Paddy Raff.